Hello, it's Cameron again, founder of StyleCraft and a pro motion designer with 2 decades of experience. It's great to have you join me in this third video in my free workshop, How to Design Style Frames. In this video, I'm going to outline the exact blueprint that you need to bring that final polish to your style frames. If you've ever been confused about how all the pieces of style frame design fit together, and more importantly, what goes into creating that finished pro level design in style frames, this video is for you. In this video, I'll show how motion designers like you and me can bring that final polish to your style frames. In video one, we talked about how to concept style frame design so you can have a clearer path to design. In video two, we then covered how to lay the design foundation so you can easily build style frames. So if you haven't seen those two videos, please go back and watch them now and then come back to this third video. Today, I'm going to build on what we have already discussed by giving you the complete solution to bring that final polish to your style frames. By the end of this video, you'll have so much clarity about pro level style frame design, and you'll see how everything fits together. We've got a lot to cover today, so make sure you're taking notes as you follow along with this video. Anytime you're trying to bring that final polish to your style frames, it can be hard. It can be challenging because in the beginning, it's hard to really understand and to know what to focus on when doing that final polish, like what to focus in on, what details should be of concern, what effects you should use, and so on and so forth. Even if you've experience with pro level style frame design already, you're always looking for that 80-20. You don't have time to waste, so you want to find that 20% that's going to produce 80% of the results. And that's why design polish is going to deliver results quickly. So let's do this. Okay, so here we are in concept one, and this is where we left off from video two. This is the style frame that we left at that point. So now we're in the final polish stage, and this is, bringing it all together. This is where we make it look really pro. It already looks really good, and that's very important, as I talked about in the last video, that you have a solid foundation for your design. This is a solid foundation. So now all we have to do is that last 20% to really bring this guy into the spotlight. Okay. So here we are. And the first thing I'm going to do is obviously this rocket over here just doesn't fit with everything else. It's too, there's too many highlights. There's too much, not enough contrast. Okay. You can see there's a lot of contrast happening here, not enough here. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my rocket and it's set to add, and I'm going to change it here to maybe overlay, shift plus to go down, soft light, hard light. There we go. There is the contrast I was looking for. Next thing I'm going to do is on this plane here, I'm going to scale this plane up a little bit. I want it to be a little bit more prevalent in here. And I also want to kind of overlap these two frames here. And I'm going to bring it above this type. There we go. That looks pretty nice. So it kind of brings the type, the letter back here, a little bit more in the background and the plane a little bit more into the foreground. Really like that a lot. I'm also going to take these two layers. I'm actually going to go ahead and unparent Josh Apple from editor. So they're two separate layers. And I'm going to select the tape sheet here. Make sure I have the right tape sheet. All three selected. And I'm just going to pull them over a little bit more. So again, they overlap. I don't know what happened there. I want them to overlap a little bit more in this frame. So it's okay for elements to overlap. It kind of, it makes it a little bit more visually interesting that way. So things aren't like divided into compartments. I'm also going to scoot this guy over a little bit. I still like that a lot. I'm also going to select editor and bring it up here. Maybe actually select the tape here and bring it a little bit over here, and maybe Josh Apple. I don't want Apple to hit the line there. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, I like that a lot. So now as we're starting to, so the frame is looking a lot better. One thing that you're going to immediately notice here is look at all the analog, the grunge look that's going on here with the text. Okay, like if you look at the text here, it's very muddied. It's imperfect. There's a lot of things happening to this text. It's kind of scribbled out. Same up with this text up in here. And then you look at this editor Josh Apple text, and it's very crisp. Okay. So we don't want that. So this is one of those things where you have to really pay attention to all of the elements here and really blend them in together. And finishing and polishing is all about blending these elements together, really making them sit well together. So one thing we're going to do here, this is a trick, is we're just going to take our text and go to blur and sharpen, and a lot of different blurs here. We're just going to go with a basic Gaussian blur, and I'm zooming in here and I'm looking at this text. I'm also looking at this text. So this text does not have to be as muddied as this text because this text is very important. This is a frame that we're going to see the editor's name, so we want it to stand out. So it doesn't have to be quite so um, grunge like and dirty and trashed as this text, but I want a little bit to happen there. So I'm going to go two. Usually a value between like 2 and 5 is okay, so 4 is too much. 2 is not enough. 2.5 is looking pretty good to me. I'm gonna go to Josh Apple as well, Gaussian blur. We'll go 2.5. Maybe because this text is a little bit bigger, let's just go half, zero point 0.5 more, so we're at 3, and it looks, pretty blurry here, but if we zoom out, and here we're at 100%, it's looking better, right? It's looking just not so crisp, right? We just want those edges to be a little bit softer. So that's nice. And the next thing I'm going to do is I also don't want this text to be completely horizontally straight across, right? It's too perfect again. Like look at this tape that it's sitting with. And the tape, has this kind of bent edge down here. It's got a bent edge up here. So I want my text to kind of follow that a little bit. So the easiest way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select both chunks of text, both pieces of type, right click and just say pre-compose. And we'll call this text pre PC for pre-comp. And there we go. Looking nice. Next, I'm going to go up to effect and I am going to go to distort. Let's see here, Liquify. I like the Liquify effects a lot. I feel like they're underused, and it's just basically like a brush. So if I have this brush and I start painting, you can see here I'm just kind of pushing text around. Well, I want my brush to be a little bit bigger than this. So I'm going to go over here to my tool options and just start increasing the size here. Maybe something like that. And it doesn't have to be much, right? I just want a little bit here, right? So see, that's already probably enough for the editor. It kind of bends up there just a little bit. And I'm using this push tool here. There's a lot of different tools inside of here, but I'm just using the very basic push tool. And I'm going to bring this text, maybe bring up the radius a little bit more here so it covers the entire chunk of text. And we're just going to push it down. So that's too much. Maybe just in here, just a little bit there. Maybe push this up just a hair. And maybe the end here, just pull it down just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to undo that. I think I like that. Yeah. So again, it's very, very subtle, but it just helps blend some of these elements together. I could, spend more time here and just really kind of fine tune some of these, but it's looking pretty good. Actually, that's even a little bit better. I really like that a lot. What else do we have here? So now let's start adding some elements over the top. Okay. So let's go and let's add a new adjustment layer. And the first thing I'm going to add here is I want to add some noise and grain. And you may say, okay, well, why do you want to add grain? There's already so much noise and grain happening here, but there's not any happening down in here. I could just add some text, some noise. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. Well, I take that back. Let's just try this. Let's add the grain. First thing it's gonna do is gonna show me a preview box here. I'm gonna go to final output. So it's the entire frame. And you can't really tell too much that there's extra grain happening in here. If I turn it off and on, I mean, you can see a little bit happen there. Mainly, I want to get some happening inside this text here. So if I turn it off, on, maybe let's increase the intensity just a bit. And let's just go with, nah, that's a little bit too much there. Let's try the third one, maybe the first one. Nope, too much. Maybe a Kodak Vision. And let's go back down to 1, off, on, off, on. I'm also going to make it monochromatic. I'm taking the color out of that grain. So if I zoom out here and I go off, on, you can see it's very, very subtle, right? So now there's just a little bit of grain here in the text, helps kind of blend it in there with everything else. I could also add some texture to that text if I wanted to, but I think for this one, I'm going to leave it off. A little trick that you could also do here. Actually, I'll show you that in the next concept. I'll leave that for the next concept. So that's looking pretty good. Let's go back to our adjustment layer. We'll call this effects. Actually, we'll call it effects 1. What else? I also like to do a little bit of coloring here. So let's go to color correction, lumetri color. This is very powerful. And for lumetri, let's go to creative and let's just pick SL big. That's a nice one to start with. So that's already really nice just off the top because everything was already kind of colored, even though it was black and white, it was at a base level, everything was matching up very nicely. So just adding this overall color just really helps bring it together. Let's drop the intensity down to 50. Yeah, just a little bit there, just a little bit. Really basic and it works. I like it a lot. We could also just play around a little bit with faded film, maybe something like 25. That's a matter of choice. Maybe I'll just go back down to 10. Yeah, I like that. That works. We're also going to add chromatic aberration. So at the time of this recording in the last year, 2 years, actually 3 years maybe, chromatic aberration has been very popular in motion design, and it kind of just brings back that analog feel. There's a lot of different ways you can apply chromatic aberration. I personally love using sapphire effects for that, but a lot of you may not have sapphire, so there is a plugin by Plugin Everything. It's called Quick Chromatic Aberration 2. This is a free plugin, okay? So it's really easy to use. You just apply it to the top of your layer, and I pretty much like to leave it at a default value, but a lot of times I'll add just a blur of 1 and really digging that. So that's with, that's without. So it's very, very subtle again, but it works, right? Okay, so we're gonna add one more effect, and we'll do that just with a new adjustment layer. The reason I'm adding another adjustment layer is I find that sometimes this effect can be kind of, um, I don't know, it can be very sensitive to what other effects are applied to the same adjustment layer. It's just my own personal experience with it. Maybe it's the version of After Effects I'm on, I don't know. But that is under Effect, Distort, and we're going to use Optics Compensation. A lot of times when film cameras are used, they have curved glass to them. So I'm just going to add just a slight bit of curve here. We're talking about 10, a value of 10, and we're going to reverse it. And there we go. So very, very, very subtle here. So without, with, without, with. So subtle, but it's all in those details. And there, my friend, is concept number 1, style frame. Really dig it. It looks great. Let's move on to concept 2. Okay, so here we are in concept 2. And immediately I see some things I want to change. And that's something I should mention is that between the overall the foundation design, the foundation of the design, and then the polish, I always like to take a break, right? I want to visually rest my eyes. So if I can give it an entire day, and say, okay, here's the foundation. I'm done working for today. I'll come back tomorrow. That's what I've done this time. I've come back the next day, and now I'm looking at this and saying, okay, there's certain things about this I don't like. I feel like it's too crowded, right? The text is too crowded here with some of these assets. Um, Overall, I like it, but it's just a little bit too much going on. So I'm just going to probably play a little bit here with some of the placements of these different elements here. It's just a little bit too much happening. So maybe something like that. That's already a little bit better. Yeah, I think I like that where that's at here. And something else I want to do here is I'm going to do a process at the end where I kind of color grade everything together. So before I do that, I just actually want to bring the saturation back up on this red. So it really stands out at the moment. I'm also looking at the texture and the text. It was on overlay, changed it to hard light. There's soft light. So I think maybe I'll try hard light for right now. That might be too much. Something else I want to do is I want to darken up the background. I know the background's already dark. Let's make it darker. So let's go up to Effect, Color Correction, Curves. And we're just going to just click and bring down the darkness of the background. Yeah, so we can still see it. Actually, that might be a little bit too much. Let's also go up into our spotlight, hit AA, and typically I don't ever like to use like a pure white light. If you look at lights, typically they're usually like maybe like a blue white or a yellowish white. I'm going to make this a little bit more of a grayish white, and it's going to also kind of darken up everything just a little bit more. That looks pretty nice. Something else, let's just actually go right in here to the text, and let's go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and pre-compose this. We'll call it text PC just like before. When we do that, it immediately, changes. It goes to a 2D layer. It's lost. It's not relating to the lights anymore, but all we have to do is click on this little guy right here, and boom, we're right back to having that text be in that 3D space. So it's all we have to do is collapse transformations. If you want, you can also click here, and I guess it's doubly 3D at this point. Sometimes that's what I do. But let's go into Effect, and let's do like what we did last time. Let's go to Blur and Sharpen, Gaussian Blur, and let's just zoom in here. Let's try 4. That's too much. Let's go 3. Yeah. I like that. That's nice. Something else I want to look at here is we talked about in the last video about how hard these edges are, right? If this was a true newspaper, it's going to be a little bit, gosh, I'm not lost for words today. It was a long night last night. I'm a little bit tired today. So we just want some imperfections on those edges, right? So how do we do that? Well, there's an easy way to do that. We just go up to Effect, Stylize, and we'll go down to Roughen Edges. This is a very powerful and often underused effect. And just by adding it right there, you can see it's already created some rough edges there, right? But let's minimize it. So we're going to take this down to something like 4, and the scale maybe down to something like 20. And you can see there how subtle it is, but yet it works. So maybe we'll go 3 and 20. Let's do that. You can also play around with some of the different settings here, like spiky can sometimes be nice. That is actually a little bit nicer. I like that for this. I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to apply it to some of these. So like this one, this could definitely use some rougher edges. So we'll paste. Yeah, and depending on the size of the image, that's where we're gonna have to adjust. If one image is larger and a certain setting of that effect works on that larger image, the the same setting is probably not going to work on a very small image. The settings are going to have to be adjusted. So looking at this, maybe let's try a border of 1. Yeah, it just needs to be very subtle, and that works for me there. Japan here, let's do the same thing. A little bit too much, maybe 1.5. Oh, it's still too much. Maybe a 1. No, I actually liked it better at 1.5, but maybe let's go back to roughen. I think that'll work. Let's go on to this image back here. Same deal. Yep, works for me there. Let's do this front one here. Well, maybe I'll change this to roughen. Yep, that works great. This one may not need. Let's go to roughen as well. Oh, that looks nice. I like that a lot, actually. And let's do this other front one here. Go back to roughen. Now, see, this is a much larger image. See how well it worked here on this image? Looks great. Maybe crank up the border here. Yeah. Now, when I pre-composed Cold War, for some reason it created like this highlight edge here, which I'm not totally digging. And maybe that has something to do, not quite sure if maybe a position got moved. You can see here, see, so the Cold War, they should be exactly the same. And I'm looking at the Y values here. So we're going to copy that Y value and paste it here. And there we go. Got rid of that weird edge. You know, it looks kind of interesting, but it's not for me for this particular look. I also think now I'm looking at this hard light is too much. Overlay now completely gets rid of it. So let's undo. Yeah, you know, I'm going to stick with hard light. That works. Liking that a lot. Make sure, yeah, let's get the roughen edges on this one as well. So we'll actually go back to effect, roughen edges. We'll decrease this to 1 and the scale down to 20. Something else you can a lot of times play with is the complexity here. So if I was to play with the complexity, oh, maybe 5. Let's just see what that does. Yeah, that's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more torn up on the edges. Yeah. No, actually, I'll say yes, and then I'll say no. That looks good. Subtle. Subtlety is our best friend, and that is subtle and it's working. And what was this image right here? Oh yeah, I did like this one. It'd be nice to have something just really kind of pushed back in the background here. I'll take it to the bottom of my layer stack here. Maybe scaling it up. If I take off that mask, let's just see, change it from add to none. Yeah, maybe let's cheat it a little bit. Let's go to color correction curves. And let's just really bring down the exposure. Color correction, exposure. We'll take off the curves here. You know what? I think I like it better with just the mask part. Actually, that's kind of nice right there. I don't like the white border, so I'm going to open up my mask, and you can see this white border. See, when I masked it, I left a little bit of that border there. So if we actually go to mask expansion and just go negative, it's going to pull that mask inwards and get rid of that mask, that white edge of that mask. So that's nice. It'd also be nice to see a little bit of depth on this with some blurriness and some depth of field. I'm not going to actually add it for this particular piece, but it is something that might look nice. And when you're messing around with it. You know what? I'm just going to hide this layer. I think it's not necessary. Yep. Looking pretty good. Like that. Let's actually duplicate that and bring this one back. So the same paper here, but because we're seeing only a part of it here and another part here, that's why this works. And I keep coming back to this image here because it's really in your face. Maybe if I was to bring this text up in here. This is all part of the polish, right? Just kind of playing around. I like that. We're also going to apply an exposure control to this one and just kind of darken it up a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so that's where we're at there. Looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add some effects to this. Okay, so let's add a new adjustment layer. And again, we'll call this effects 1. And to this, we are going to do a fast box blur. And we're going to repeat edge pixels and we're going to crank this up to something like 50. And then by changing this down here in the timeline now from normal mode to screen, it almost creates like this interesting, well, it creates an interesting glow effect, right? So you can see it kind of brings everything without using a glow effect. This is kind of a cheat for it, right? So looks pretty interesting. Might be too much, but let's keep adding some effects to this. So let's do another adjustment layer. And you may be asking, why am I using multiple layers of adjustment layers for effects? And that's just so I have more control. If I want to reduce like the transparency, right? So let's just reduce the transparency of this to, let's try 65. We'll see that adjusts my overall glow. So that's with, that's without. So, that looks nice at 65%. So that's why I use different adjustment layers, because I can adjust transparency for the adjustment layers and adjust the effects that way. Next, we're going to go in, we're going to add some grain again. Let's add some grain here, noise and grain. Add grain, final output, and we're going to make this heavy grain. So we'll try this first one. And boom, look at that. That looks really nice just right there. I'm good with that. Next, we're going to add some chromatic aberration again. So we'll go into plugin everything, quick chromatic aberration 2. Again, if you don't have this plugin, go to plugin everything and just search quick chromatic aberration. Depending on when you're watching this, there may be another version of it, but that's all you have to do and download it and you're good to go. So maybe, I was gonna say maybe red and green for this one. We're gonna stick with the default. We're also gonna blur this just a hair and maybe give it a slight rotation. That's probably too much. Yeah, that's way too much. Maybe a 0.1. Looks really interesting. I like that. Awesome. And let's do one more adjustment layer here, and we'll actually call this color correction. We're going to go into effect, color correction, Illumetry color. It's my favorite coloring plugin that comes with After Effects. And we're just going to go into creative and look, and we're going to pick number 3 here. And it's going to desaturate this and just give it a really nice look. We'll keep intensity at 100. Maybe let's fade the film a little bit here. And I like that a lot. So we could, like I said, we could adjust the amount of glow here. If we want a little bit more. That's really nice. We could go less. I think I like it right where it was at. 65%. We're gonna try one more thing here. This is a film burn. I thought would be kind of interesting to bring in. This is a film burn from the texture pack for film textures from Motion Science. This was created with my buddy Ryan Figard, and this is an awesome texture pack. And it's got a lot of film burns to it, but we could do something like maybe this film burn right here. And all we have to do is just set this to something like screen, and it's going to load up here. And look at that. Look how cool that looks. You can, just go through here frame by frame and find something that works for you. There's a lot of different film burns to pick from, but I absolutely love it. And I actually like where it was at. So it just gives a nice, interesting texture to the side over here. And so one other thing I mentioned right when I first started designing these, I said I wanted to approach the second concept as one that I could easily animate. And just to show you, because I built this in 3D space, now I can easily do things where I push in on the camera, I pull out on the camera and do things like that. And I have depth already happening here. So it's already in the beginning stages of animation at this point. It's really easy because I designed this in After Effects. I took the time to build it in 2.5D space. I'm ready to start to animate if it gets approved. So there you go. There's concept 2 for you. So there you go. That's how you bring it all together and you deliver pro quality style frames. Doesn't it feel good knowing what you should focus on right now, regardless of where you are in your journey? Do you see how this clarity will help you design pro level style frames easier and faster? Now that you've got these wheels turning, I want to hear from you. I know you picked up a lot of ideas from this video, and now's the time to get started. So let me know in the comments below this video what you're going to do with this. And if you found this video helpful, others will too. So please feel free to share it on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, or even send the link to a friend. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to implement what you learned today easier and faster. If you're a junior motion designer, this lays out the exact plan so you can design like a pro. And if you're a mid-level motion designer, you'll build on what you may already know by following specific steps designed to get you past what's holding you back. So you get on track and you reach your goals more quickly. Speaking of learning how to design, I've been hearing from a number of people who've had questions about StyleCraft, and I'd love to see you in there. In the next video, we'll talk more about this program and how you can join. The way it works is that I open up the full class to the general public on a very limited basis. I do this twice a year. We do this so that it runs similar to like a college class where we all go through this together. So registration opens for a few days, then it closes so I can create that space for the new members and I can deliver the content. So if you're interested in moving forward and want to know how, you'll want to definitely join me in the next video where I lay it all out for you. But for now, I want to leave you with this. Just by taking part in this workshop, you're already closer to knowing how to design pro level style frames. Think about video 1 where you learned how the concept process works for style frame design. This training alone has shown you how you can have a clearer path to design. And it's amazing how simple it can be once you have the steps. Then you made big strides in video 2, where you saw how to easily build style frame layouts by using assets from the concepting process. And that's huge. And knowing this will continue to pay off from now and into the future. And today, you got the complete rundown on how to bring that final polish to your style frames. Isn't it easier understanding every step along the way? To make it even better, we cut to the chase so you know exactly what gives you bigger results faster and with less demand on you. So in just a few days, you've learned so much about how to design pro level style frames. And in the next video, I'll share the next step on your journey. I'm so excited about what's in store for you, and I'll see you in the next video.